Great. Welcome everyone to a full day session on Azure Synapse Analytics. And thanks for the organizers for putting such an event because Azure Synapse Analytics is a new topic and there is a lot of things to cover in it. And it is nice to have a dedicated conference to cover the different aspects of Synapse Analytics. And luckily, this is the last session for the day. And I'm Anupama Natarajan. So before we get into the session, I'll say a little bit about myself. And you can call me as Anu. I'm a data and AI consultant, and I work for myself, and I live in Wellington, New Zealand. So I have 20 plus years of experience working in the IT industry. So my career started like as a developer all the way. I got passionate about data and then worked in a lot of data warehouses and operational databases. Ranges like in terms of like DBAs to data modeler. And then finally, like when I have a passion for automation too. So when AI and artificial intelligence came into existence, it's all about I was thinking, how do I use data as well as like AI to automate some of the work and also like give better insights for my business users. So that's pretty much my passion. And I'm a Microsoft MVP for AI. And of course, like data is really important when we talk about AI. And I'm a Microsoft certified trainer as well as a speaker. So I run a lot of like training courses, especially around certification exams, which is around data platform as well as AI. And I speak at a lot of conferences and user group sessions. I do organize events locally here, like the SQL Saturday events as well as local user group events. And I pretty much understand how hard it is to organize an event like this, but kudos to all the organizers as well as the volunteers who supported this event today. If you have any questions post this event and if you want to reach out to me, so here are my social networking channels. Like feel free to reach out to me either through any of these mechanisms, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. So with that note, we will get into our session today, which is like how do you enable AI? So when we talk about Azure Synapse Analytics, is it just all about bringing data and doing data integration related activities? But can we get insights or can we incorporate artificial intelligence into the Azure Synapse Analytics interface? Yes, you can do that. So before we get into how do we go about doing AI in Synapse, I want to just introduce you to modern data warehousing. And I think already a lot of people would have introduced to Azure Synapse Analytics, but I will briefly touch on what it is and also a high level overview on Azure Synapse Analytics and what does advanced analytics really mean and why we talk about artificial intelligence and advanced analytics in Synapse space and how do we go about doing that, especially machine learning as well as which can be a pre-built machine learning or a custom machine learning, and how do you integrate that with the Synapse. And finally, we'll look at a couple of demos related to that and few references that you can take back and learn more about this topic. So without any further delay, let us quickly look at the modern data warehousing. So there is always a thinking with organizations, and even when I talk to a lot of people or data professionals, the first question they ask is like, do I really need a data warehouse or a data lake? And the answer is it depends on your scenario that you're trying to solve. So what I have found recently is like you need both in most of the scenarios. The reason for that is the data lake will give you the opportunity where you can just store the data in its raw form to start with, and you can give access to the data as quickly as possible to your data scientists or your data professionals because you need to understand because we generate a lot of data these days. So starting from social networking platforms to IoT devices. So data is spread over and it is coming in a huge volume as well as in huge velocity. And which means like you need to find a way like which how quickly I can get access to this data and pretty much look forward like is this data going to add value for my organization or not. And that's where data lake gives you good advantage because you don't need to worry about modeling your data, structuring your data, and so on. Just put the data in a place and give access to your data professionals as quickly as possible. And then they can make a well-informed decision whether this data is really required and is going to add value for long term for their organization, and then they can decide about modeling them and so on. So if you think about modern data warehousing, so you get big data, which is you can store it in a data lake, as well as like relational data, which is coming from your normal operational applications within your organization, and that you can, which predominantly we store it in a data warehouse. But modern data warehousing is all about amalgamating these two things together, and we need a solution that can cater for this. So with Azure Synapse Analytics, now you have the ability that you can pull data from your data lake as well as from your data warehouse, and you can amalgamate together. So no need for us to segregate saying, okay, big data, I need to deal it in a separate way, and relational data, I have to deal it in a separate way. And then I need to have two different mechanisms for querying them or ingesting data into them and so on. So Synapse is something that is solving this problem. So you can have a single unified tool in order to solve your big data as well as or store your relational data all together. So what is Azure Synapse Analytics then? So as I mentioned in the previous slide, it is an integrated analytics service. So what it allows you to do is you can merge your data lake, or you can query your data lake as well as your data warehouse systems through a single unified interface. And previously, if you think about before Synapse, how the landscape looked on Azure, so I may have to provision like Azure data warehouse separately, and I need to provision a data lake separately, and I need to, if I want to query them, I need to use different tools in order to query them together. And I have Azure Data Factory, which I have to provision separately, and then I have a Power BI service which I have to provide provision separately for analytics service. I didn't have a single interface where I can do all these end-to-end data, like what do you say, like the end to end of my data lifecycle to be managed in one place. So that's what Synapse Analytics trying to address for you. So you can ingest the data from that interface. You can query your data lake or data warehouses from the same interface. You can also like integrate your Power BI workspace through that interface. And finally, like all these things, like in terms of monitoring and maintaining, you should be able to maintain all from the single interface with the Synapse Analytics. And last but not the least, you saw in the previous session, like how you can also integrate it with your source control. And that is an important aspect also to consider when it comes to like your ETL or ingestion processes, and as well as your analytics and the notebooks that we maintain and so on. So quickly, I think you would have seen this slide multiple times in today's session, but I will just quickly walk through. This is pretty much your Synapse Analytics. So it caters for like you have your data lake storage where you can store all your raw files as they come along. And then you have got your analytics runtimes. Synapse supports both your SQL as well as the Spark runtime, catering for like you can pull through your data, store it in a structured format, or you can just use Spark to pull through the data and start doing like machine learning activities using that. Then you have both, you can do a provisioned SQL pools or on demand. So on demand is like just provision it when you need it, otherwise run when you need it, otherwise you don't need to pay for it. And the different languages that it supports ranges from SQL to Python, .NET, Java, Scala, as well as R. So if you are what do you say, prominent in any of these languages, you can just go ahead and start using it. Overall, from a user experience perspective, that's where Synapse Analytics Studio comes into play. So the single unified interface I talked about, where you can do everything starting from provisioning your SQL runtimes or your Spark runtimes, as well as like doing ingestion. And if you want to do machine learning, you can do that through the Synapse Analytics Studio interface, as well as doing analytics, integrating with your Power BI, all through this single interface. Of course, you have got your other aspects in terms of the cross-cutting concerns like management, security, monitoring, and metastore management. They are also can be comprised within the Analytics Studio, which we'll be looking at in some of the demos, but you would have already seen that in your earlier sessions also. So the main crux for this particular session is all about advanced analytics. So advanced analytics is all about like, okay, how do I do like pre-built artificial intelligence as well as like a custom modeling within Synapse Analytics. So you go from traditional business intelligence where you just go and look for like, okay, what happened? I did some transactions last year, whether my sales have been increased or decreased. So this is what the traditional BI used to give information. So it's about what has happened. But with the mathematical as well as statistical modeling, these days what you can do is you can predict the future. It's not about the past what has happened. It's all about like, okay, based on the information I have got from the past, like I can predict what can happen in the future, which is really important because using that information organizations can make well informed decisions. And that's where like advanced analytics is taking organizations these days. So in order to do advanced analytics, machine learning plays an important role, and that you can do machine learning now quite easily with Synapse. So some of, if you know about the machine learning workflow, like what are the aspects that you need to do in order to do machine learning. So first thing is data. So if we talk about like predicting the future and things, data plays a prominent role in there. So you need to acquire data from the different data sources. This can be like from a data lake, from a data warehouse, or operational databases. And you need to have a better understanding of your data. And even before you acquire the data, first thing is you need to know what is the problem you're trying to solve. Even though I haven't mentioned here, I assuming like you know what is the problem you're trying to solve using machine learning. The reason for that is not all the problems can be solved with machine learning. So trying to understand the problem and then assessing whether machine learning is capable of solving that problem, then you find the right data that you need to acquire, and you need to have a better understanding of the data. If you don't have that, probably I definitely recommend you talk to your subject matter experts in your organization to better understand the data. Then you go into the process of creating the models based on your data. So this is again creating the model to find the right solution for your problem. And finally, like you train the model, you test the model, and you deploy the model, and you do the scoring of your model. So this is pretty much the workflow that you follow for a typical machine learning process. So when it comes to Synapse, and when you talk about data acquisition and understanding, so probably like we'll be using the Azure Data Factory in order to just extract the data from different data sources. You create your pipelines, and in terms of data preparation or exploration or understanding of your data, you can either spin up your SQL pools on Synapse or even the Apache Spark for Azure Synapse. So either of them allows you to explore the data, and you can have a better understanding of what are the columns that are available, what columns are really important for me to use, and so on. I think you had good sessions around Azure Data Factory earlier in the day. It will just pretty much help you around how do you pull through the data from different data sources, and how can you do that within the Azure Synapse Studio itself, the interface itself. And Apache Spark and SQL pools, like we'll be looking at that in our demos around like how can you just pull data from a file and then store that data inside your Spark interface or the SQL database interface. And then you can, how do you start doing machine learning using that data? So when it comes to modeling, so you can do modeling either using Apache Spark ML or MLib or MML Spark, you can use it. And of course, the key thing for me is around using Azure Machine Learning automated ML within the Synapse itself. So they are tightly integrated, which we'll be seeing in our demos. And also the ability for me to use the Azure Cognitive Services right inside Synapse. And for instance, like I can do like a sentiment analysis using a text analytics service of Cognitive Services. I can do find anomalies in my data using the anomaly service that comes with Cognitive Services. So these things can be integrated right through to Synapse itself once you ingest the data straight in there. Of course, when it comes to model deployment and scoring, if you're using the SQL pools, you can use the T-SQL predict function, as well as if you're using the Apache Spark pools, then you can do model deployment scoring through your Apache Spark pools itself. So this helps in terms of the libraries that are predefined and available, you can train the models and you can use whichever language that you are well versed in order to do the batch scoring of your models. So we'll be looking at these aspects in our demo session. So let us quickly jump on to the demos, which is around starting with provisioning your Azure Synapse Analytics service. So let me quickly pull my browser window here. So what I have got is this is my Azure portal, and I have already created a couple of resource groups in here. And so let me quickly show you a demo resource group. So I have already created a Synapse workspace here, but I will go and show you how do you go about creating a new one. But because it takes a little bit of time to provision, so once we create it, I will show you like what it actually creates. So you search, go to the marketplace, search for Synapse, and this is going to bring you the Azure Synapse Analytics. So you click on create, as simple as it is. Cool. So the resource group, if you want to create a new resource group, you can go ahead and do it here, or you can just use the resource group that's already in there, pre-populated. I can give a workspace name, maybe Synapse demo workspace, put the closest data center for me. And okay, so one of the things you have to provide as part of provisioning the Synapse workspace is the data lake storage Gen 2 account. So you can attach an existing Gen 2 storage if you have one from your subscription, or you can go ahead and create a new one. So I'll just say ADLS Gen 207. And you can just provide a file system name. Because it's a new one, I have to just create a new file system. I'll just create a default one. And you can assign the permission. So by default, like you can add yourself as the storage blob data contributor role for the data lake storage Gen 2 account. So this will automatically add the contributor role so that the Synapse Analytics or the workspace can easily access the data lake storage in order to pull through the files that it requires. So in terms of security, like if you're setting up a SQL pool, like you can set the password that is required here, and then pretty much you can click on review and create. And what this is going to do is this will go and create your workspace that you require for Synapse. I'm not going to go through that process because it takes a bit of time to create. So what I have done is I have already created with a similar way by giving a 06 as a suffix. So as you can see here, this is my Synapse workspace, and this is my data lake storage Gen 2 account. So if you are provisioning a Synapse workspace to start with, these are the two resources that gets created as part of the workspace. And then once you jump onto the workspace, then you can open up the Synapse Studio and you can do further things in here. So here I have got just a built-in serverless pool, nothing else. I don't have any Spark pools provisioned or other SQL pools that are provisioned here, which I can just go ahead and add at a later point. So something to keep in mind. So we saw how do we provision Azure Synapse Analytics service. Mainly go to the marketplace, provision it, and the two things that gets created is your workspace as well as your data lake storage Gen 2 account. So the next demo, what we are going to look at is how do we train a model with automated ML. So here I'm going to just ingest some data and then going to go ahead and create a machine learning model. And in order to do that, I'll be taking some sample data, loading it inside my Synapse environment using the Synapse Studio interface, which I'll show you shortly. And then we are going to create a machine learning model. And in this example, because the machine learning model normally takes a bit of time to run and create it, I have already created the machine learning model, but I'll walk you through like how you can go about and invoke it straight from the Studio interface. So getting back to my resource group here. So I have got a resource group already set. So here what I have done is I have already got a Synapse workspace created. So I'll just open my Synapse Studio, so which I also already pre-done just to save the time. So this is my, as you can see here, this is my Synapse demo file, and this is the Studio interface that I have invoked by clicking on Open the Synapse Studio. And this is the single unified interface I was talking about that allows you to do ingestion. You can explore the data, you can visualize the data, and finally you have the ability to monitor your runtimes and things in here. So what I have done to start with is like I have created a SQL pool. So you can go here in manage and you can just go and provision a new SQL pool as you require. So in this example, like if I want to do machine learning where my data is sitting in SQL, then I can provision a or attach to an existing SQL pool or create a new SQL pool. And you can go ahead and do that, but I'm not really using a SQL pool here, but just showcasing how you can go ahead and create your own SQL pool from this interface. I need an Apache Spark pool because I'm going to do a bit of ingestion using that. So in order to create a new Spark pool, let me just zoom this a bit. So you can go and provide the details and what is the node size that you require, and then the price will change based on that. And appropriately, you can review and create one. So if you use less number of nodes, then the cost will be appropriately reduced for that. Of course, Azure Purview is there. And if you want to do metadata related things, that is also coming through in Synapse. Nothing to do with this session, but it's a nice thing to note. So this is the Spark pool that I have already got here. So now I get into data. Just close down some of these notebooks that I have already got. Cool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to develop. So I have got a notebook already here, which is pretty much going to create a data for me, like a Spark table for me using the New York taxi data set. So key thing is I need a Spark pool to load this data and to create the Spark table. And that's what I provisioned using the manage interface there. And now what you can do is when I run this particular thing, so the New York taxi data is already available in the Azure Open Datasets. So this particular notebook is going to go and pull that data for the range I have specified here, and this is going to execute it. So I have already pre-executed this, and so the first part is getting the data, and then it is just preparing the data, and finally, like what I have got here is the columns and save the data basically inside my Spark table. So that's what pretty much this is going to do here. And how this is going to happen here is running the notebook. And you can see here post running the notebook, you will have the New York taxi data Spark table created with all the columns that I really require in here. So this is all what I have specified as part of this notebook. Cool. So as you can see here, these are the columns that I was loading as part of my data frame. So post creating the table, because now you have the sample data already available in here, the next step is you can do is like you can invoke or enrich your data with the machine learning. And that is an important capability that you have to understand. Quickly. Cool. So in order to do the machine learning capability, first thing you have to, before you can even get down to that, is to create a linked service to Azure Machine Learning. So this is, I have got an Azure Machine Learning link service, which I have been pre-created already. So let me quickly get this information for you. Cool. So this link service can be created here, as you can see. In order to do the link service creation, I need to have a machine learning workspace created. So this is where the next part comes into play. Let me go back here. So one of the prerequisites if you want to do machine learning with Azure Synapse Analytics is to provision a machine learning workspace. So you can just go here and say add and say I need to provision a machine learning workspace. So keep that in mind. You create a Synapse workspace, which we already done. That is mainly for ingesting the data and stuff. And then if you want to, once you ingested the data and if you want to create a model to train your data, then probably like with the automated machine learning, then pretty much you have to create a machine learning service, or we have to create a workspace in here. So you can go ahead and search for machine learning and create a workspace. So provide a workspace name. So I can say ML demo 7. And a few things to note is like, I don't know if you have previously provisioned a machine learning workspace. If you haven't, a few things that gets created as part of provisioning the workspace is a storage account, a key vault in order to secure your credentials, an application insights, and container registry if you really want to create containers. By default, it will be none, but if you want to attach it to an existing container registry that you have for your organization, you can go ahead and do that. So in here, like the machine learning workspace will be created once you go ahead and review and create. As you can see here, these are the other services that will also get created. So in my interface here, I have already got them created. So this is my machine learning demo 05 things. I will click on launch studio. So this is my machine learning studio interface. So this studio is totally different to your Azure Synapse Analytics studio. So let me get back to it. So make sure that you have got the machine learning workspace provisioned first so that you can create a linked service. So if I go here and say new, because I have already got one. So here I will say machine learning. There you go. Azure Machine Learning, you create in here, and then you can provide a name for this linked service. So this linked service mainly establishes the connection between Synapse and your machine learning workspace. So you can choose this Azure subscription and the machine learning workspace name, the tenant, and the service principal ID. So this is another thing that you have to keep in mind. So if you want to create a link service with Azure Machine Learning from your Synapse, you need to create an app registration in Azure Active Directory. So let me quickly show you that too. So these are some of the prerequisites which I will sum it up once we have created this. So first thing is you need to have a Synapse workspace created. Then the next step is like make sure like if you want to integrate with machine learning, you have to create a machine learning workspace. And if you want to create the link between Synapse as well as the machine learning workspace, what you have to do is you need to create an app registration. So currently I'm in my Azure Active Directory. I can go here and do an app registration. So I'll quickly show you the Synapse one I have already created. Cool. So there's quite a few, sorry. And just, yeah, Synapse Analytics demo. So this is the app registration that I have already created. Quite simple to create. You just go and hit on create. And then what you really need is a secret that needs to be created. So one thing to note here is this is the part I was talking about when I talk about secret. So this secret value is something when you create, you have to store it. And once you have created and once you, if you haven't noted down the, so if you haven't noted down the secret value, then probably you may need to go back and create a new client secret. So create this app registration, note down the secret, and then you're ready pretty much to go and put that information in your Synapse Studio. So let me go back here. Okay, let me get the other browser windows. Okay, so this is the service principal ID and the key. The key is actually your secret, and the service principal ID is nothing but your application ID. So you take your application ID, and that is your service principal ID, and the principal key is actually your secret. So once you provide these two information from your app registration, you can click your test connection, and this will make sure like that your Synapse can talk to Azure Machine Learning, that integration is already been happened. And once that is there, then pretty much you have got this, which is your linked services. So which I have already got. I have got my principal ID and as well as the principal key. And I have tested the connection and they're all working fine. So it's already preset for me. So this is a prerequisite if you want to invoke machine learning from your Synapse Studio interface. So now if we get back to our data, where you have the data. So the next thing is, okay, now I want to create. So I don't have an existing model. If you have an existing model, you can enrich it with an existing model. But now I have got to create a new model. So what I'm going to do is this is the source data and give an experiment name and name for the best model. And the target column I want to choose is fair amount. And the Spark pool I'll be using is my Apache Spark pool. So that's pretty much what I need initially. And then if I hit on continue, now I can choose the model type. So I don't know how many of you have used automated machine learning, but if you have used the automated machine learning using the machine learning studio, you could see the same type of interface in here. Like when you create a model, you choose the data set and then you have to choose the model type. It can be either the classification, regression, or time series forecasting. And the key advantage here is I don't need to jump out of my Synapse Analytics environment and go into machine learning to do those activities. Those machine learning activities have been well integrated within the Synapse Studio itself. So I can choose regression and I can specify my primary metric, what should be the training job time and the concurrent iterations. I can open this in a notebook and this is going to create all the tasks in a notebook for me, which I can execute if I need to, or I can hit on create run, which is going to go ahead and spin up my automated machine learning in my automated machine learning environment. So once I click on create run, if I go back and check my machine learning studio, I should be able to see the run that is already happening in here. Or I can open this up in a notebook, save the notebook, and then I can just run the task that I require. So let me put this in a notebook. So as you can see here, all the information that I provided is all available in the form of a notebook, the configurations and everything. And then it goes, once I run this, this is going to say like, okay, your experiment is running in the portal and it will wait for the completion. So I'm not going to do this because it will take some amount of time, maybe like 15-20 minutes, and I don't want to waste the time running just at this notebook. But the idea behind here is if you run this, this is going to invoke the automated machine learning in your Azure Machine Learning Studio. So let me quickly jump back onto the Azure Machine Learning Studio. So this is the run I was talking about. So if I go to automated ML, so this is the run automatically. It ran for my Synapse Analytics demo 05 environment. So you can see the New York taxi, and it has got the best algorithm summary, all the details about it. Typical, like this is what you get to see when you create a automated machine learning model via this interface. But the only thing is I didn't invoke anything via this interface. I provisioned those relevant services and invoked everything via my Azure Synapse Studio. So now you can see how well like they are integrated, that you can utilize your Synapse Studio in order to trigger your machine learning models. So this is one part, which is like, okay, like a custom machine learning. So you are creating the machine learning model from scratch. But the other option you have got is the integration of pre-built machine learning models like cognitive services within with the data that you have got in Synapse Analytics. That is going to be really powerful because with the cognitive services, the predefined machine learning models, like you can do a lot of quicker AI solutions for your organizations. So let me quickly jump on to some of the prerequisites that you need to do before you can integrate cognitive services with the Synapse Studio. So let me get back into my stuff. So the first thing you have to do is to provision, get back to my resource group, is to provision cognitive services. Currently, the two things that are supported is text analytics and anomaly detection. But keep watching the space. There may be more things that may be integrated with the Synapse Studio. So if you're looking for integration, these are the two things currently integrated via the console, like the Studio interface. And I will show them too shortly. So what I have done is you can go and click on add and you can search for text analytics service. So this is going to bring up the text analytics cognitive service, and I can choose that, provide the details that I require in order to provision the text analytics. So the region, as usual, Australia East, and the name. And of course, you can choose a pricing tier for that. Once you provision that, what you will be seeing is this is the text analytics provisioned part. So the key parts for here is the API keys, because Synapse needs to access your text analytics, right? The cognitive service that you have provisioned. So what you need to do is you need to take the copy of the key, and we need to figure a way like how Synapse can use this key in order to um, interact with your text analytics that you have provisioned in your subscription. So you can copy the key here, but you don't want to just embed the key directly into Synapse, and Synapse Studio doesn't even encourage you to do that. So what you have to do is you have to provision a key vault. So Key Vault is a service that you can provision on Azure to store your sensitive information like the secrets or passwords and so on. So you can go ahead and provision a Key Vault intro like a service here, and then go ahead and create a secret. So what I have done is I have just created a secret. It's a manual one. The name is like maybe text analytics demo secret. The value for the secret is this, which I copied. And if I want to create a content type, I can go ahead and do that and create. So this is going to go and create a secret with the secret value that I copied from my text analytics service that I have provisioned. So once you provision it and create the secret will be now available to be used by Azure Synapse. So it's not stored in plain text or anything. It's all created in Key Vault. And the next step is once I have created the Key Vault interface, now it is all about how do I go about and integrate with this Key Vault so that I can establish the connection to cognitive services. So let us jump back into my Synapse interface. Let me pull that screen here. Cool. So now I'm going to manage. Again, I need to create a linked services. So this time the link service is going to be for my Azure Key Vault. Cool. So I have got my Azure Key Vault link service here. This has already been provisioned. But if you want to create a new service, link service, you can go and search here for Azure Key Vault. There you go. Continue. And you can say like, okay, choose the Key Vault from my subscription. So here I have got the Key Vault by demo. And then as you can see here, the information is available all here. So now this is going to establish the connection with my Azure Key Vault. Once the connection is established, you can even test the connection to prove. Cool. So it's already there. So now my Key Vault is all integrated through the link service. Now I can go to data. What I have done is I have got a data lake storage Gen 2 account here. So as I told you, like when you provision Synapse, you have a data lake storage Gen 2 account that you also provision. And demo files is basically the file system I created at the time of provisioning. I have the ability now to run a SQL script to do a bulk load or create a new data flow, or I can upload a CSV file or any files that I require to store it into my data lake storage Gen 2. So I have got a CSV file, which is like I have got comments coming from my retail website. So website comments, and I want to do sentiment analysis based on this comment information. So I uploaded this CSV file into my data lake storage Gen 2. Now what I can do is go back to my workspace. So now the thing is the comments is here. Now I need to load this particular information into a Spark table. Again, we do the same thing like creating a notebook to load that comments into a Spark table. So as you can see here, like now I have used the Spark pool and run this particular piece of code to run and create or import that data and create a Spark table in there. Cool. Post that. Now I have got another notebook. So now coming back to here, the notebook, the first notebook has actually imported my data into a Spark table here. So as you can see, all the columns are listed in here. The next thing I need to do is go here, machine learning, enrich with existing model. So previously with automated machine learning, we created a new model. Here I'm going to enrich with existing model. Here it shows the cognitive services or the pre-trained models that I have already got. The anomaly detector or the text analytics. As I said, these are the ones that is available right now, but keep watching the space. So I can choose sentiment analysis using text analytics. go ahead and choose my subscription because it really requires which particular cognitive services account that we need to use. And of course, because the secret needs to be retrieved, right? It has to be retrieved from Azure Key Vault. And it will show me the Key Vault thing. And I think it is text analytics secret. Let me quickly confirm that. Yeah, cool. So now I can go back and put my secret name as text analytics secret. It would be great if I have a drop down. I don't need to go back and refer to that. Cool. So that's what is really important. And then if you hit on continue, now you need to specify which column that the cognitive text analytics cognitive service need to do in order to do the sentiment analysis. So this is basically the command. So now what you can do is again, this gives an ability to open a notebook. So all the configurations and things that you have done via this interface, now you will have it in a notebook format, which you can run and you can just do the sentiment analysis using that. And let me cancel that because this is the, I'll show you the notebook. Let me close down these things. Okay, get back here, notebook 2. So this is the one I was talking about. So here I have got so it is checking for the version of MML Spark, and then this is the notebook. So it goes and retrieves the key for the secret that I have provided, which is the text analytics secret. And this is feasible because of the relationship that I created or the link service that I have created. Now it is going to load this data from Fabricam Text Analytics. This is the Spark table that I created. And then now it is going to do the sentiment analysis using the pre-built cognitive service for text analytics. When you run this, pretty much, I can run this again. So this is now going to take the data set and then use the text analytics cognitive service. And this is going to provide me the sentiments and it is going to display the results for the command saying like, okay, what is the sentiment for each and every command? And it let it run and it is going to bring us the output. And this is again how quickly you can just import your data into the Synapse Studio and using like into the data lake storage Gen 2 using Synapse Studio. And then how can you spin up quickly a Spark table, load the data, integrate with your cognitive services, and you can do sentiment analysis. Same thing with anomaly detection. Same, the logic that we are going to do is going to be the same thing. Provision anomaly detector cognitive service on the Azure portal, store the secret of that keys of your anomaly detector inside Key Vault. And if you have already got an integration or the link service between Key Vault and Synapse, pretty much like you can spin up the notebook as you can see here with anomaly detector, give the secret name that you have been using, which will automatically retrieve the key and it will do the sentiment analysis. So I think this is going to spin up my Spark instance because the Spark pool, I have just kept it idle. I haven't been using for quite a few some time since this morning. So let this run and we should be able to see the output post that. But this is how quickly you can easily do machine learning using either cognitive services or Azure machine learning, automated machine learning, basically integrate that within Azure Synapse Studio. You may be asking the question saying, is this the two ways only I can do machine learning in here? Not really. So if you want, if you're a data scientist and if you are well versed in creating your own notebooks in order to just create your machine learning models, you can go ahead and do that. So that is still available. You can spin up a notebook and start doing it. You don't need to rely on automated machine learning to do that. So you can just go and spin up your notebook, create your Python scripts, and you can do machine learning through that. So coming back to this, key things to remember here is how do you provision Synapse and how do you create a link service and why the link service creation is really important. So as you can see, now only it's running because it's just warming up the pool. So to recap on that, like we created the Synapse workspace. And what we have done is like we also created an Apache Spark pool because everything was done through Spark tables here. So I spinned up the Spark pool. And once I created the Spark pool, then it is all about loading the data. So you can load the data into a Spark table. And if you're doing automated machine learning, just right click on the Spark table and say like, okay, create a new machine learning model for training my data. And then it creates the machine learning model. As you said, like we already gave the configurations that it required, which particular model, that like whether it's a regression or classification model it needs to choose those details. And then once you run it, pretty much like that is going to invoke your automated machine learning model. If you want to see the progress, you can see the progress from here itself. As I said, there is an ability like you can create run and then go to machine learning studio to see the progress, or you can just open it in a notebook within the Synapse Studio interface like here, and you can see the progress. So here the job got executed, and as you can see the sentiment of the commands that was produced. So I didn't do anything other than provisioning a cognitive service for text analytics, and provisioned created the link between created the link between the key vault, because I was storing the secrets in key vault. And once you have done that, then pretty much you can just say like I want to create and use a pre-existing machine learning model, and it gave you the options, and you chose which particular machine learning, or sorry, which particular cognitive service that you have provisioned in your portal. And pretty much we integrated that and opened the notebook and executed it. So really straightforward in terms of like how do you go about and integrate and do machine learning or artificial intelligence within Azure Synapse Workspace. I would definitely recommend you to try this. And the monitor option, like if you have any Spark jobs that you're spinning up, you can see the progress of those things. So here when I created the Spark table, and it automatically showed me like, okay, how long it takes and how many records it was running through and so on. I didn't show much about the SQL pools. What I was showing was more around how do I create Spark tables and do machine learning using that. But you can also create your own SQL pools, and you can just go ahead and query the data from your SQL pools, and you can use the predict function with the T-SQL predict function in order to do predictions using your data sitting in your SQL pools. So that I will be able to demonstrate it in another session or so at a later point. But this gives you a good idea around how can you do machine learning within the Synapse Analytics workspace. So getting back to my slides here. So we saw this demo. I showed you how do you configure cognitive services for Synapse. And also we looked at how do we do sentiment analysis with the Synapse and cognitive services. So these are some of the references that you can go and refer to just to get an understanding in general about Azure Synapse Analytics and pricing. That is something comes in everyone's mind in terms of like, okay, if I want to provision this, how do I go about doing that? So some of the tips I will be giving is if you're creating a dedicated SQL pool, make sure you pause it when you're not using it. And if you don't need a dedicated SQL pool, and if you're okay to use a serverless pool, go ahead and do that, because that is going to spin up when you really need it. Same thing with Apache. So if your pool is Apache Spark pool is idle for a certain amount of time, it will automatically will pause it and just set up that idle time based on your needs. And something to keep in mind, because those things will help you to save some costs when it comes to Synapse Analytics. And of course, there is a whole wealth of information available in MS Learn if you want to get down and do a deep dive into Synapse Analytics related topics. With that note, and thanks for providing me the opportunity to showcase to you how to do artificial intelligence, especially machine learning using Azure Synapse Analytics. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask now, or after this session, if you have to reach out to me, feel free to reach out to me.